So I'm going to start by heading to zoom.com, which you'll notice Otto went to zoom.us because of where I'm located. And I'm going to visit plans and pricing because we suggest that you use Pro for your panel meetings. You'll notice with a basic or free account, there's a limit of 40 minutes, which can be tricky with panel meetings. So again, recommend using Pro. So let's say I already have an account, I've signed in, I'm going to go to schedule a meeting. And we typically, when we're scheduling a meeting, we will be sure to make it as descriptive as possible, including a description. Let's say this panel meeting is for our project support. And when I'm scheduling the meeting, I will note that, let's say, the meeting is going to run from 2 to 4, so 2-hour in duration. You can log in before and last after. So if I log in at 1:40 to get set up, that's okay. And if we're having really great conversation and it goes until 4:30, also okay. This isn't a reoccurring meeting. We're not going to be at registration because everybody's going to get a direct link, but I am going to change it to a personal meeting ID. So this is something that every Zoom account is assigned, and we only use the generate when it's something that we wouldn't want the public to join. So that way it's unique to that meeting, like a staff meeting, for example. So personal meeting ID, no password necessary. We have video starting off, and that way when folks log in, they can have the choice. But we do encourage our panelists and the facilitator to be on video, so you can have that face-to-face conversation as much as possible. Audio both, so you can call in and or do computer audio. And then you'll notice down here we do have everything clicked, but we don't worry about the authenticated users part, including recording the meeting automatically. We do it to the cloud, and that way anyone on our team can log in and download it, as opposed to it being housed on one person's computer. So I'm going to save that. And from here, I can copy the invitation. So I could use all of this information, but we typically limit it to topic, time, the meeting link itself, since you can just click into it from there. The ID, even though you'll notice the ID is the same as the end of the link. And then finally, we include just one phone number. We typically use New York since we're on the Eastern time zone, and that's what will go in an invitation via email, for example. And I can also download a calendar invite. It'll already make a little meeting for my Outlook calendar. Before I actually start a meeting, I do want to plug over into settings, not recordings, but recordings will also occur. If you choose to record, that's where they'd be hiding. But in settings, I do want to point out there are a plethora of choices, even in just our Pro account. You'll notice it's kind of overwhelming, but there's two things I wanted to point out. First of all, I have scrolled down to in meeting advanced. You'll notice there it is there, to waiting room. Now, this is the spot where if somebody is trying to join the meeting, that they are held until a host lets them in. So I like the opportunity to modify this to kind of enhance the experience of the person waiting in the waiting room. So you can change the title bar here, the headline. The meeting topic and the meeting ID will autofill based on the particular meeting. You can add your logo and a description as necessary. And then I want to scroll up a little bit to also check out in Meeting Basic. I wanted to point out screen sharing. We have it set to host only, just so that for our public meetings, an applicant or somebody else that chooses to join couldn't take the controls of the meeting. So that way it's only what we share. So let's say that I am over back in our meetings and I want to start the call that I have. I'm going to pull it over from my Zoom that was already opened. So I've officially joined the call, and I want to go over quickly some of these important controls down at the bottom because these are specific to hosts. There's a more limited selection of controls for when you are a guest, like a panelist would be, or an applicant when they log in. So first of all, I would want to join audio. So I have the option to join right here on my own computer, or I could call in, and this will enable me that by having this participant ID, I'll be able to link my phone call with my Zoom account, which allows me to have visual because I can see other people, their videos, and then also if somebody shares the screen. So I'm just going to join with computer audio. And you'll note down here at the bottom that my microphone is now turning green because I am actively speaking. So I'm going to mute myself because I don't want other people to be able to hear me right now. With video, you have a lot of different options in here. That's me. Hello. You'll note that there are other options for Zoom within the meeting here. Again, a little bit of information overload, but that's where you can find that. Invite is a nice little button because it allows you to quickly email the information while you're in the meeting if necessary. You can, copy the invitation information from earlier. Don't have to go back to your zoom.com link. Manage participants. You'll note that I have someone in the waiting room, which you'll recognize the name. That is another account of mine on my personal computer. So I'm going to admit that person. And so now they're no longer hanging out, only seeing that waiting room screen. They are now in the meeting. Now, when you have participants in the meeting, you'll have several options. You can chat with them directly. You can make them a co-host. Like, for example, if my colleagues from the Arts Commission join, we'll make them co-hosts so they can help monitor the chat. They can place people in the meeting room if we need to. So you'll note how easily that I was able to put someone in. We do that when we have a conflict of interest. So, if a panelist knows one of the applicants or the artists, we will withdraw them from the active meeting that's being recorded with the audio until it's time for them to come back in. So we'll admit them back in. You'll also notice that, like right now, that participant has not joined audio because they only have the Zoom video icon. So I'm going to, on that account, join and mute it because you notice there was some feedback there. And I can mute all, unmute all. I have options there, as well as additional options with this more button where I can, if I want to have a chime, I don't personally like that when people enter. I can also mute people on entry, for example. Moving on to share screen. When I select that as a host, I will see all of the open applications and windows that I can select from to share, as well as the whiteboard, which is a neat feature that actually takes over the viewer's entire screen. So while you can see things around it right now on Zoom, the participant would only see this white area, so more like this. But they can add text, draw, and so on. Cool, very cool feature. So instead, let's say I wanted to share an internet link. If it had audio, like if I was sharing an actual video, I can select share computer sound, and that will allow my computer to share its audio in addition to my microphone audio. So I'm going to pause or stop that share for now. And on chat, you'll notice I can have that open. There's a lot of different ways that you can play with the views. Speaker view, I can be full screen and take over the entire thing. And then when I open things from the bottom, instead of it being on the side like it was before, you'll notice it's its own little box, which I tend to do because I like to be able to drag it into areas that I'm comfortable with. So I'm going to go back to gallery view for now. Then recording, we talked about that. Again, I recommend cloud, but you could absolutely do to the computer. And if I were recording right now, then I could pause or stop the recording. Closed caption is excellent. You could hire a third party, but you could also either as the host type yourself, or in this case, I'm going to assign someone. So I'm going to go up to my other account, and you'll notice I can select assign to type closed caption, which then allows that person to accept that they have been assigned. And if I want to view it, I have to go to this little arrow, and you'll notice it says show subtitle. So I'm going to select that, and it tells me that it's on. And boom. So let's say that I'm over here typing what I said, right? So you can see it, and you can also change the settings so that it's larger if you would like it to be larger, like so. Okay, get out of that for a moment. There's also support. I use this very rarely, but it's an opportunity with the participant's permission to take control of their desktop if, for example, they're having trouble with Zoom. Again, we typically deal with that in chat, or I give them a call. And finally, over here, you could actually stream your call live on Facebook. The only time we've ever done that is for a call that we expected more than 100 people, since we have the pro account, and that's where it's limited at, but that is an option. So a couple of things that you might encounter as far as issues. Again, we know now that when someone's talking, that the little arrow will turn, or excuse me, not the arrow, the microphone will turn green, and so you can mute all, unmute. You can rename them. So let's say I want to denote the fact that that person is serving as a panelist, as opposed to, a public participant, or sometimes, folks will log in with their first initial last name. So I'll just personalize it a little more. Since you're working with panelists, you might have people that want to be able to look at two things at the same time, which is totally understandable, because let's say they want to be able to see both what's happening on Zoom, so all of your fellow panelists' faces, maybe a screen that's being shared with information about the call, like the reader list, but also the application, so that they can talk about their scores and why they chose them. So you just manipulate the windows by having them in different tabs and have it separate like that. And those are kind of the main things. I did want to point out that if you have more than one person in your staff that would be logging on, you can make them a co-host. So I could make, I think I mentioned that earlier, but also you wouldn't want them to try to log into the same account because it has known to knock the current host off of the call. So it can actually remove them since you're then using that particular account. So feel free, if any of these things brought up new questions, please reach out. We want to be able to provide you with as much information as possible. And thanks for considering hosting your panel meetings online. Bye-bye.